So a new email for security plus related work. This is the email ttc.secplus@gmail.com. Now, when you send in an email, what we said is that you should include your class name. And your class name is going to be, if you see your class name is Info Security Plus. That is April 2022. That is your class name. So put in this heading and whatever you wanted to put, the information that you send in. If it is a homework, put in as a homework. So we want the header or the subject to be this. So this is referencing to your class number so we can track information that is related to you. Then make sure you get this email. For homework, please use this email to send the homework to this email. And I'm going to put it in the chat as well. So I'll put this in the chat and I'll also load this in your homework folder so that you have access to it. This is going to be in the chat. So everybody that is joining, at least you have access to it. Can you all get that email? Dr. Ozo, so I see the issue that you were having, the email that you were sending it to a wrong email the first time. So after you corrected that and the subsequent one that you sent, that was the correct email that you're sending it to. So that was why we're not getting your email.
Yeah, actually, I did not send it to the wrong email. The email that was given to us, if you open the link, it did not have the LLC. So whoever sent that to us sent us a wrong information.
Okay, all right, thank you. So this is the correct email now. Please send all homework to this email address.
No problem, thank you.
All right. Okay, so let's continue from what we were doing yesterday.
Yeah, so welcome. Just 1 minute before you go ahead. Just to encourage everyone, your homework is very important, and it tells us that you at least doing the homework. Sometimes Professor Kwaku goes through, sometimes goes through, and I look at it. I use some as example to encourage everyone. At the end of the day, the homework is going to be summary of what you do in class. Some of your interviews that you're going to be doing is going to come from those homework. And it's the same process in the SOC, because this class is more of a professional, and everybody, a lot of us here, we don't want exams. A lot of people are scared of exams. So homework is summary, or is going to be like summary of what you've done through the class. And then at the end of the training, you're not going back to reading all these notes that Professor Kwaku is giving you. You just review your homework, and it's going to be those I think 16 submissions. You just read them through, and you take your certification exams. And when you get to the SOC, you're going back to review those concepts. You're not reading the entire note. So everyone should endeavor to do that. You see the benefit of it at the end of the class. And then when Professor Kwaku is reviewing the homework, you're going through your own homework and then updating it. Or at the end of the day, when you go home, you listen to the video, you update your homework. Because there's no way I'll be going through, or he's going to go through 46 or 50 homework. But we look at those who do the homework, and I do random just to see if people, everybody is doing it, following the process, or they're having difficulties. And then I'll go back during the review. I'll also see if people are participating. If not, they will have to spend more time, because that's how we know if people understand, if you guys understand the concept or not. So it helps us also restructure the way the trainings go. Like this chapter is very tough. Even when I was training, this chapter 3 is a challenge. You always go back and listen and read and ask questions. Then lastly, please, if we're on chapter 3 of our protocol, if you want to ask a question, that question must relate to the chapter. If not, you can always call me after class or call Professor after class, and they will answer your question. Thank you. So that we don't derail or digress the class, and then it takes away from the concept of that day. A lot of students get confused.
Okay, thank you, Professor Eric, for your time. All right, so just give me a second and then we can start the class. So anybody have questions related to what we covered yesterday? Does anybody have any question? Oh, okay. I didn't know that you're all good like that. So nobody have any question for what we covered yesterday? Oh.
Yeah, Professor. This is Jonathan. I have a question. Could you please review the go over the whole TCP IP process and the SYN and the three-way handshake and the SYN flood attack as well? Thank you.
So we haven't got to SYN flood yet. We're going to be talking about that today. When we get there, we'll talk about it. But simply, the three-way handshake, as we said the three-way handshake process is what we call the SYN, ACK, and ACK. And when you are asked during the interview, just tell the interviewer that is what it is, SYN, ACK, and ACK. And we mentioned that if you are pressed to explain what the SYN means, just tell them that is synchronization where client initiates connection or the TCP handshake process. After that, the server also reply with synchronization and acknowledgement. And finally, the client close the connection with what we call an acknowledgement. That flow is what we call the three process: communication from the client to the server, and communication from the server to the client, and finally communication from the client to the server. These three flow is what we term the three-way handshake process. And that only happened for TCP. We'll mention that what is IP? IP, as we said yesterday, we say it's a unique number assigned to system to help them to identify the system on the network that they are in or the network on which they are on. So on that network, the IP that is assigned to the system, it helps to identify that system. Now, IP works with TCP. Remember, we said TCP is just like the vehicle that carries the information. But where would the information be? Without the IP acts as the tool that carries that data. But the TCP is the vehicle that transfers the information from the recipient or the sender to the destination. So therefore, TCP goes with the IP. The TCP will be the tool that carry the data, but the vehicle that move that data from one system to the other is TCP. So we said TCP is a transport layer protocol. And that is why we call it transmission control protocol. And we say we have two types of that transport layer protocol. One is what we call the UDP, and the other one is TCP. And we mentioned that because of the vulnerability for UDP, you may not see a lot, but you're going to see a lot of TCP communication in your environment. And we mentioned who make the decision, what sort of protocol to use. It varies. The system make the decision based on what you are doing. If what you are doing is needed for a reliable communication for end-to-end, whereby sending information and receiving information is guaranteed, your system will use TCP. If that is not the case, then your system will use UDP to transfer that information. So those are the processes that we talk about. And we start looking at.
I'm sorry, Professor. I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you repeat that last part one more time? I'm sorry, that about UDP and TCP. I'm sorry, one more time, please.
Listen, I think this class is recorded. If you if you don't understand anything, you can go back and play the record. There's a timeline for this class, and that timeline has to be met if you have to pay attention. So this back and forth repetition should not hold. Students need to pay attention and make their note. If you miss anything, when at the end of the class, you upload the notes on the video, you go back and listen and make your notes. So everyone should take note of that. So the back and forth repetition should not be happening. Thank you.
Prof, I think you are not sharing your screen, please, or is it possible?
I was not teaching or saying anything yet. Someone asked a question that we're just answering, so we are just.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So all right. So let me share my screen. What we're going to be covering.
Hello, I have a question. This is Mercy. If you can hear me.
Mercy, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. My question is regarding TCP and UDP. So what are examples of communications that are being transferred through TCP, and what are examples of communications that are being transmitted to the server or the client through UDP using today's social technology?
Okay, that is a good question. So we're going to be looking at that, and you're going to tell me what sort of, but I'll give you the first two. Anytime information that is involved, for instance, video streaming or anything that involves video, the system will make decision to use UDP. If we go on your computer right now, you will identify that Zoom call that is happening is using a UDP to send that information. So let's look at something that happened. A lot of you don't know that your computers actively, they are communicating and using this protocol to send in and out of information. So let me start this, and then let's see a live scenario and see how systems are sending information out. So this is what you're going to be doing. You're going to see some of these things, and then probably provide you these two is what we call TCP dump. If you run TCP dump on your system, you'll be able to see live traffic, how communication is happening on your computer, and the protocol that they are using to send out information. All right, so this is done. Let me start my TCP dump, and let's see. So I think it's in my download folder. Okay. TCP view. Okay, let me. This guy. Just run it. See if it is running. It's taking some time to run. It's already running at the background. Let's see. Yes. Okay. So that is what is happening now. If you see here on this system, there's a lot of things happening. So my computer is communicating. And if you see on the column that says protocol here, you're going to see a lot of TCPs and mostly TCPs than UDP. If you see TCP v6, it just means that it's referring to TCP version 6. If you don't see any number, it just means TCP version 4, but they don't write it. So this is what is happening here. Information is being sent out through the system and is received. What sort of protocol is used to send that information out? TCP. Now, and to your question, there are some services, for instance, if you see in here, this is a service that is using, they say NTP. NTP is using a TCP, a UDP service to send out information. NTP is a network time protocol. Is the protocol that helps anytime you turn on your computer, it connects to a dedicated network, a dedicated time machine that keep or give update your system with time. So that is what that is. And it uses UDP protocol to do that. Now, as I mentioned, for video streaming and things that need speed, the system would choose UDP over TCP. So now this system is working now. I want to start another thing and you guys gonna see, assuming that I start my Zoom session. Now let me bring this up again. Zoom, so right now, all of you, your computer will be sending information using Zoom as well. If you see in here, I don't see anything concerning Zoom on my computer, but if I turn on Zoom, I'm going to see that working. And I can tell, okay, yeah, that is a video call that I'm making because you need a video access to do that call. So the system is going to use that. So let me turn on my Zoom here. Where did I have that? Okay, let me see if I can join the class that we are all in. And then we're going to see join. Okay. Yes, Mr. Joe, give me a second. Let me finish this and then I'll take your question. I think he's waiting for me to accept this guy. I don't see it. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I know. I see what happened. So if you see here, there's no internet access. I don't know if you guys can see that. And there was no internet access because I have assigned the IP to my system yesterday. So, and it can't reach it. So I have to go in and make that changes and let the DHCP assign the IP. So change adapter to advanced settings. So the person who asked this question brought up a lot of things that you need to do. So properties, and then I have to go to, remember that was IPv4 and go to properties. And this was the IP that we assigned. So I'm just gonna click that and say, okay, let the system obtain the DNS and everything. And then I hit OK and close that. So now that that is done, I think I should be able to hop now to that system and then see things flowing up. So join again. Okay, so I'm in, and then I've accepted that guy to join. Okay, yeah, I'm in now. So let me mute myself. Okay. All right, so this, I have joined now, and what I wanted to do now is get out of here and go to, so I'm in the class just like you guys, but what I want to do now is go look at what we're looking at earlier. So exit school. And then I want to look at what we're looking at earlier here. Now, you're going to be seeing a lot of UDP now traffic that will be coming because of the Zoom session that is started. I believe it's still in progress. So let's see if I start to see that. Okay, so yeah, in here, you guys, if you notice, we're seeing a lot of UDPs now. Now, and I can investigate to see which device is that, and that is going to tell me those are Zoom sessions that I'm connecting to. And so things like that. So if you go down, you see it says zoom.ext, and if you see it's using a protocol UDP. Did you see that? Did you see that in here? It tells me the service that it is, and it's telling me the protocol that it's using. So that is necessary for video streaming, and that is what you're seeing in there, those protocols. So anytime I see UDP, I can tell that, yeah, those are instances. If I'm doing a video streaming, that is when my system pick those things. And that is why it's showing there like that. So video streaming, if you're doing Zoom connections, yes, your system will be using those protocols because you need that to move faster. So the system make decision to use those and not you make the decision for the system. Any other question? But Messi, did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. So that is to say that real life examples of TCP will be things like if we are communicating via WhatsApp, Instagram, Google Chat, and just the rest of the chatting social apps, the protocol that we'll be using will be TCP.
Yes, so most of the communication, like I said, you're going to see a lot of communication via TCP than UDP. And like I mentioned, based on the need, if you're looking for speed of, if the system realizes, okay, this is an application that needs speed to hold that communication, the system will choose to use UDP. If it is not, the system will choose to use TCP. But most of the time, that is the decision that happened without you even knowing. And a lot of us don't know that this happened behind the scene until somebody tells you and you look at it to see what is happening.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Joe.
Yes, Prof, quick question here. Does the TCP version 4 or version 6 has anything to do with IP version 4 and 6?
It doesn't. It doesn't necessarily related to IP version 4 and 6, but the system just choose that as well. And it also depends if you enable. So if you see on my NIC, as I showed you guys yesterday, on my NIC, I enabled IPv6. So, and that is what is allowing that to happen in there. That the system think, okay, hey, I can use that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. So in here, if you see, I enabled that in here. So at work, most of the time, you guys will not see this, or you may see it's just IPv4 enabled at work. All right, so if there is no further question, then let's dig in. I still see some hands up, but I'm not sure if those are new hands or old hands. All right, so we started looking at the protocols yesterday. We look at ICMP, and we said ICMP is a protocol. It involves tools that are used for testing connectivity. And ICMP will use UDP protocol to send out information. And we said the information, it is used to request for connectivity testing and tools like pin, traceset, pin path or path pin. And those are some few of them that are used. And because of the vulnerability that this poses, most organizations will block these on their network. For instance, an attacker can use these to cause what they call a DOS attack, and a DOS is what we call denial of service. Do not say DOS, we call it DOS. And that is what we call denial of service. So next, and they say no, because of how often ICMP is used, most organizations will need to block these on their network. Because attackers can use this to do something that we call enumeration, or to gather information about your system, as you saw us do it yesterday. Then there is another protocol that we call ARP. So what is ARP? ARP stands for Address Resolution Protocol. ARP is the protocol that works. Maybe let me not talk about ARP. Let me talk about MAC address first. So what is a MAC address? From when we started this class, I think last week we mentioned that for a switch level, a switch does something that is very important. And we mentioned a MAC address. We say MAC address is the physical address of system. These addresses are baked into your system by the vendor. Whoever built your computer or your machine, build in these IDs or this address into your system. You can't change it. That is why we call it a physical address. It stays with your computer forever. Now, from investigation standpoint, this is a good tool that you can use to crack system. So how is this MAC address used? So from the switch standpoint, the switch uses the MAC address to identify systems that are connected to that port. So if check the MAC address and send the information to systems like that. So we call it a MAC address. So again, if you go on your system, how do you identify your system MAC address? Again, let's bring out our PowerShell. So in here in the search menu, just type PowerShell. And then once it's open, once your PowerShell is open, go in it, and then we want to type that same command that we start with typing yesterday to see our IP address. If we type that same command again, ipconfig /all. If you type in that, and then look at where your NIC is, either your internet 0 here. I think I opened two, yes. Here where it says internet 0 or internet adapter 0, look in there. And when you are in there, if you notice here, it says physical address. This is address that is assigned to the system by the vendor. Now, most of the time, you see, these are 6 numbers. You can divide it into 2 halves. The first half identify the vendor. The second half is the unique number that is assigned to the system. So in some system, you may see this number is the same in a lot of systems. If it is, you know that the vendor is the same for all those systems. So these 6 numbers, the first 3 denote the vendor of that system. So there are 2 online that you can use to see who is the vendor. So I can tell from attacker standpoint, they can tell who is the manufacturer of your computer by looking at the NIC or the physical address of your system. So to do that, we said, like I said, there is a 2 online that you can use. If you go online right now and you go do MAC address lookup, you see a tools come up that you can use to do that, to query that. If we go online, we want to do MAC address lookup. MAC address lookup. All you just need to do, okay, yeah, I know why that is. Don't worry. MAC address lookup. Yeah, you can pick any of these numbers, any of them here, and then just put in the MAC address. So you see here, it's telling you enter the MAC address or the URL of the vendor. So you can example like this. So you can put in, so I think I copied that, no, okay. I do not copy that in my buffer. So it's telling you how to look at that. So to look at the MAC address, type ipconfig/all in the command prompt in a Windows field, and then look for the physical address. That is your MAC address. So in here, I want to get in there and then get my MAC address again. I don't think I can copy this from here, but let me try 000C. Let's see if it works. Okay, yeah, it's not gonna work. So 000C. And then let me see the rest of the numbers. 2982. 29-82. And I think it's -C4. And then check the last one. 4E and then BA. 4E. So I put in that and then I can just search. And if you see, it's telling me some important information. A given information. So looking at this, it's telling me it's a prefix. So this, because this is the vendor, I told you the first 3 tells you about the vendor. And what did it say here? Who is the vendor of the computer that I'm using? Did you see that? It's a VMware. So you can tell what sort of machine the person is using. So yes, it's true. I'm using a virtual machine. So this system was able to pick out that and has the information about my system. So that is how it is. People use this. If I'm using my physical machine, yeah, it will tell me the vendor of my physical machine, and you see my MAC address as well. So that is the physical address of your system, and that is unique. Like I mentioned, the first 3 identify the vendor of that system. So that is what it's telling us here. And the company's location, where the company is, so we see that information about the company. All right, so how does the system use that MAC address? That is where app comes in. App is what we call address resolution protocol. App is the protocol that maps your MAC address to IP address. So app, let me bring in this guy so that we can look at this. First, we mentioned about MAC. And we said MAC is an alphanumeric number, so which means the alphabet is assigned to system by who? By the vendor. So whoever the manufacturer of your system is will assign that number to your system. And we said MAC address is the physical address it ID, it identify your system. So when somebody asks you, what is your MAC address or what is the MAC address of your system? All you need to do is look at do ipconfig/all, and in here, you can find your MAC address. The MAC address is the physical address of your system. Now, so again, then the next thing that we want to talk about is what we call app. You can talk about app. Also understand that this MAC address works, these are located in layer 2. Of the OSI model. And the device from which you find this, we said a switch. So what is app? We said app is what we call address resolution protocol. So what does app do? App maps IP address to MAC address. Know that. App is the guy that is going to map all your systems, the IP address that each system has, to their respective MAC address. And then where does it put that information? It caches that information, and we say it put it into something that we call MAC address table. So let's go look at it. So in here, how do you check the MAC address table? How do you see your MAC address table where the app maps your IP address to your MAC address? So let's go see. In here, we're going to type. Hello?
Please, yeah, my hand was up. I don't know. I was waiting for you to finish.
Okay, go ahead.
I had a question with the first MAC address. When you check, I realized that the Ethernet MAC address and the wireless and Bluetooth, they all have different physical address. I don't know if there's a specific reason to that.
Yeah, so this is a virtual system, yeah, and they will all have a different MAC address on the system. But this is unique to those systems. So if you see in here, let me show you something. And then Let's give some time for this guy to open. Adapter settings. So the information that you're seeing is coming from here. If you see, there is a Bluetooth network connection nick in here, so it will have its own MAC address. This is the guy that I'm using, so that is its MAC address. This is the guy that is communicating over the internet. This is what is providing me with IP. Here is the VMware network card, and this is also another one. The most important, this is what we're using. A lot of you may only have two, maybe this, the Bluetooth and your Ethernet 0, but you're not gonna have the other ones. You need to understand how to create this. This is a virtual machine, so you're going to see a lot of things that may not seem normal to you. When we get to how to create a virtual machine, you guys will see, or when we're talking about virtual machine, you understand it. So that is what you're seeing that, yes, so each of them will have their own MAC address. But the reason why I didn't point to that is this is just a VM, and this will not be the same thing that you will see on your local system.
Okay, because I put it in and noticed mine had 3 different, so I was a little bit confused, but thank you.
Yeah, so did you see the one that says, that is what I point to, the one that
Yes,
yes. So this is what
I just wanted to make sure, yeah.
Okay, yeah. All right. So we said MAC address, the app is the guy that is going to map your MAC address to your IP address to your MAC address. So let's see what happened. There's another command that we need to type, and it's just app-a for us to see the app table. And if I put in that, yeah, this is where the information is. So if you see here, these are the MAC address. If you see, the system is telling you physical address, and on the left side is telling you the internet address, which is the IP address. So if you see, we have IP mapping to physical address, IP mapping to physical address, IP mapping to physical address. And that is what we call the app table. And this is where your app is the guy that maps this information. Now, the next thing that we're going to see why this information is relevant for attackers. We're going to look at something that we call app poisoning. For app poisoning, attackers want to disrupt this information or put in information in here that will send your data to something, some other device, or disrupt how this works. So this is what we call app table, is the mapping of IP address to MAC address. And the guy that is responsible to do that is the app. So know that the function of app is to map your physical address. So app, we call it address resolution protocol, resolve IP address to media access control address. And we say that it maps IP addresses to MAC addresses. This is very important, and you should understand the work that app does. Without app, layer 2 switches cannot work effectively. That is why the app is there. So app and MAC address come in handy for layer 2 to be effective. Now, and as we mentioned, TCP and IP, we say uses the IP address to get packet to a destination network, but once it arrives on the destination network, it uses the MAC address to get to the correct host. In other words, app is required once the packet reaches the destination. So as I show you the table of app table, or that is what we call MAC address table. Now we have an attack that try to feed off of that IP MAC address table. That attack is what we call app poisoning. App poisoning is an attack on the app table where attacker tried to poison or disrupt the app table. Now, when we say disrupt, what does that mean? The aim of the attacker is to change some of these things in your system. So which means that if a MAC address identifies a specific system, if an attacker puts a different MAC address in here for a system, do you think that this IP to that MAC address mapping will work effectively now? If an attacker is able, if this is the mapping that helps system to function properly, if an attacker is able to change this mapping, put a different system MAC address in here, do you think this system will work effectively?
No.
Okay, so MAC address, MAC poisoning is the act, or app poisoning is the act of an attacker disrupting the app table. Now, sometimes the reason why they do this is to redirect your traffic to a device that is their system. So attacker can make changes to that and put in their device or a device where they want your system to send information to instead of a device not your system to send information to. Then they will plug in that in here, and which means that your system will be able to be sending information to a device that you don't deem or you don't authorize to do so. That is why app become very important, and we call that app poisoning. And app poisoning is an attack that happened, we say it happened in layer 2 where an attacker disrupts the app table and by compromising information that are there. So app poisoning uses app hacker to give a client false hardware address. Update and attackers use it to redirect or interrupt network traffic. So if an attacker can do that to your system, it is going to redirect your system traffic to a device that is different than its intended destination. So you think you're sending information to somewhere else, but information is going somewhere else. Or your system will be able to send information to a device that you don't think your system should send information to. And that sort of attack is what we call app poisoning. And know that the aim is to change your hardware address, manipulate your hardware address or the physical address of your system. Now we have this NDP, which is what we call neighbor protocol or discovery protocol. You don't need to worry about this network, the NDP protocol. The next protocol that we want to talk about is what we call SSH. SSH. SSH is, let me see, maybe I'll talk about, okay. SSH is what we call secure shell. SSH is a protocol that we use for connecting to system. The advantage that SSH provides is that any information that you send through SSH is encrypted. So a lot of people would like to use this protocol for work, especially remotely. If you're working remotely, SSH come in handy. Now, let's illustrate what we mean by connecting to system remotely. So assuming that you are you wanted to connect to system securely, we said SSH come in handy. How do you use that? So in here, if you have any system that is local to you, so this is what we call the local system. And when you say local system, it could be a computer that is in your house, in your or computer that you are close to physically, that you can touch or work with. And then remote. It's a device that is located in anywhere of the world. So it doesn't necessarily mean that this system is close to you. It can be in any part of the world. So the SSH provides you ability for you to connect from your system to this remote system and can work in here as much as you want, anytime. And the beauty is that anytime SSH, you're using SSH to connect like this, before your information leave here, it does something, it encrypts your information. So what is the importance of that? The importance of SSH doing this provide you an ability that we call, it provide confidentiality. It maintain confidentiality. SSH provide that ability to do that. Now, so, and we also have to mention that SSH uses something that we call a port. Let me mention this. We also have something that we call, you're going to hear this word often, logical port. And we also have something that we call physical port. Some of you who will be that are in the Wednesday class, maybe this will make sense very soon. When you say logical port, these are numbers that are assigned to services. And the numbers that we're going to look at, it ranges from 0 to 65,535. Those are port numbers. Those are what we call logical. They are things that you cannot touch. Things that are on your computer that you can't touch. We call them the port that we're talking about, logical port, are numbers that are on your computer. The system uses it for communication. Then we also have physical port. Physical port, these are physical holes that you can see on your computer that you can plug in things. So holes on the computer that you can plug in things. So what are some of the physical ports on your computer? Some of the physical ports on your computer, for instance, the Ethernet port. Ethernet port is a port on your computer that you can plug in cables to your computer. The USB port. The USB port is a port that you can plug in things on that computer. These things are what we call the physical. These are holes that are on your computer that you plug in things. Those are what we call physical port. But when we talk about logical port, they are numbers assigned to the system, and those numbers ranges in here. So SSH uses some of these physical logical port as well. And SSH uses what we call port 22. So anytime you hear about SSH or port 22, know that they mean the same thing. When somebody asks you during interview, what is SSH or what logical port does SSH uses? It uses port 22. So SSH uses port 22 to send and receive information. Now, so let's try that and see how that works, how we can use SSH to make connections. So there's a tool that we call PODI, and I'm going to use that to connect to some systems that are here remotely, and then we see. So let me power on this machine. and I can connect to them using SSH, and let's see. Okay, so that machine is coming up, and then I want to bring out, there's a tool that we call Poddy. This Poddy will provide you with a session to be able to connect to systems that are not close to you or that are not local to you. So in here, if you see, this tool is what we call Poddy. And in here, if you see, it's asking me what sort of protocol to use or connection type. So in here, if you see, the one that is selected is SSH. And on top of it is the port 22. So that is the default port. And anytime the system is connecting using port 22, we know that that is SSH connection. So how do I connect to that system that I just power on now? I can just put in the IP address of that system. So 192.168.233.164. There's a high chance this may not work here, and I have to go to a different dot to do so. Oh yeah, it works. So here, the moment I hit connect, I'm connecting to that system. So what I need is to put in my user ID, and then after that, we see is going to allow me and put in my password, and I connect. So life is good. I am able to connect to this system and can work in here. You're not gonna be doing anything like this. You're not gonna be doing anything like this. So it's just me. So you don't need to worry about this. This is just for me. So then here I am, and I can see a lot of things in here. So I have connected with that system. Now, the reason why I want to do this is, let's see, Snoop, let me check if this works. Okay, this is not gonna work yet. Okay, so in here, there is something that we call Promiscuous Mode, and then you can try to connect and see how things are working on the system. So let me check something in here. Duplicate. I want to see if I try to connect to the system again, what you guys, okay, all right. What you guys gonna see? Okay, it's not showing anything. Let me see. Yeah, this is not connecting. It's not showing anything. Well, let me see. Close this and then give it -v. Okay, to be verbose. Let me see here. So this is what we call the dark screen. A lot of you may have seen some people work from this screen. So that is what it is. SSH is able to give us that to connect to that. What I wanted to do for you guys to see something is this system is not showing me. Let me bring out another system, and then I will connect to that, and let's see how SSH, the beauty of SSH in action. Let the system come up, and then I need to get an IP address for it to get in. Yes, Mr. Joe, how that is happening, I can take your question.
Okay, Prof, you said the default port for SSH is 22.
Yeah.
So my question is, does it mean that we can customize the port numbers?
Yeah, you can change some of the port numbers for your services. You understand that in some instances, as we're talking, people know that these are the default port for those services. So sometimes you can hide behind, you can hide that and then give it your own port as you wish as well.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. So I want to get into this, and there's something that I want to show you guys to see in here. So terminal. So I want to capture, okay, this is listening on dot 31. So I will bring in a new session, and I want to connect to the one with 192.168.2. And then I believe I'm into, yeah, so then, okay, and then I want to change, okay. So, let's see if it didn't. Uh-oh, I just don't begin.
Hi, sir. Please, I have a quick question.
Okay.
Please, I wish to ask the port, like the port 22, how is it classified under the various ports? Like, is it under the unsecured, secured, or?
Hold on, we're going together. We're going together now. When we're talking about the port numbers, we're going to talk about that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Welcome. So, I thought I have, oh, okay. I think I should log in with this route once and for all. Okay. Okay. All right, so here I am. I want to run some command in here. Let's see things happening live. So Snoop is one of the tools that attacker or somebody can use to capture live traffic about things that are happening. So if you see here, yeah, you're going to see a lot, some of the things that we'll talk about, that like the protocol that is being used, UDP and TCP happening. But this would be too hard for your eye to capture. So you will not be able to understand some of these things that is happening. So you're not going to understand some of this happening here. But what I want to tell you is that attackers sometimes use things like this to see what is happening behind the scene. So these are computers communicating, and the protocol from which they are communicating. You can see this live and see what is happening. So if you don't know that computers can talk, yeah, they are talking. And I could see some information coming from, most of the time, it's coming from this IP address, and I can investigate to see what sort of that IP address is. Later, we're going to do that. But what I wanted to tell you is, if you are using a services that is not secured, somebody can see your traffic and what you're doing. So SSH is one of the guys that a lot of people will use because of the security that it provides. It encrypts your information. So we say SSH, it encrypts a wide variety of traffic such as secure copy. We're going to talk about that. So SSH can also encrypt TCP. When SSH encrypted traffic, it's used over port 22. So to the person who asked the question, yes, port 22 is classified as one of the secure ports because, as we mentioned, it's using SSH and the information is encrypted. So we term that as secure. Now, there are other protocols that you will use that are not secured. Another protocol that is there that we can use is what we call SCP. What is SCP? SCP is what we call secure copy. So also SCP, just like SSH, is a variant of SSH. Because of the advantage that SSH provides, many people want to adopt that. So again, just as we're talking about SSH, there is another protocol that we use to copy information. That is what we call CP. We can use CP to copy data from one location to the other. But CP itself is not secure. So if you want to copy information between two systems, because of, remember, we just talked about SSH and we said it encrypts the information that you send out. So instead of using CP to copy that information, we want to adopt the information from SSH. So therefore, we can change this now to use port 22. So we're going to change this to SCP. SCP stands for secure copy. It is used to copy data from one system to another remotely, and it uses port 22. So if you have remote system and you want to copy data between them, then SCP is the tool to use. You can use that to copy information remotely. And we said it uses port 22. From the advantage that SSH provides, we want to feed off that. Since it encrypts information and maintain confidentiality, we want to use that advantage. So therefore, CP is now changed to SCP because of the advantage that SSH provide. So SCP will also use that. So again, let me show you the tool that we're using. We have another tool here in my local that I can just call WinSCP. So in here, WinSCP is one of the tools that you can use to copy information between two remote systems. So in here, if you see here, it's telling you something, file transfer. And what I want to do, if I select SCP, see that the system keep the port as port 22. So using that, I can use it to move information between two systems. So I can copy information from maybe this system that is here, one of the systems. So I can just put in, let's say, 192.168.233.164. And all I need to do is my username and my password. And I can log into that system using that protocol. So it's logging in. And then once it log in, we'll see. So I have login now. So these are the two, so these are two different systems now. On my left is the computer on which I am. On my right is where I'm logging into. So I can move data between both systems now, knowing very well that my information is secured. So I am in here and I can move a data. So assuming that I want to move, maybe is there any data in here? There's nothing in here. So let's go here and I create some data in here and then you guys can see it live. So I think, let me create it from here. If I'm in here and I want to create some data, so I want to create maybe a hash test file. And then maybe I can put some information in it. So echo my And I want to point that to text file. So that is all I have done. So, oh, sorry, I typed a thing wrongly. So let me just do this. I wanted to put in. All right. So if this is the information. So if we go to this screen now, you see that if I refresh this, you're going to see that information that I created in there. So this is the text file that I just created there. So you see, if I want to move it to my local computer, I can move that. I can move that, knowing very well that this is secured. So I'm moving into and then if you see now, I was able to move that to my left-hand side. So it's one of the protocols that we can use to move information. But this one provides you secure connection. Your information is secure. If you look at it, it's using port 22, so it's secured. Anything that you send through that will be secure and protected. So that is about SCP. SCP secure copy is based on SSL and is used to copy encrypted file over a network. SCP uses what we call port 22 like SSH. Also, there is another protocol that also uses SSH. And we're going to look at both of those protocols. The advantage that SSH provides, another protocol that we want to use that. So we have a protocol that is called FTP. FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol.
Please, can I ask a question on that SCP?
Yes.
Okay, I saw you put in an IP address when you were trying to transfer the information. Are you putting in the IP address of the other system in which you're transferring the information from?
You put in the IP address of the remote system.
Oh, okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, you put in the IP of the remote system where the information is that you want to connect to. You're telling it, hey, go there. So remember we said the IP identifies the system on the network. So if you give the system that IP, your system knows where it's going.
Okay.
That system is on the network. So you tell it, hey, go to this device and your system will be able to connect to it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I see a lot of hands up. Mr. Joe, I see your hand up. Is that a new question? If not, I will move.
Sorry, it's not a new question. Sorry.
Okay, Madam Hope. Or Miss Hope.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead with your question.
Yes, I just want to ask, this is out of curiosity. Can we say VPN is a form of SSH?
Good question. VPN, yeah, it works like that, but what VPN does two things. When I try to open something first in here, you guys saw some error that came up. What is that? And I told you not to worry about it. That is the work of VPN in action. So VPN, what it does is when I try to go to this site, it was sending some funky information. Yeah, I'll tell you later what it is. So VPN help to protect, to hide your identity on the internet. We're going to see something later where one was again talking about IP as well. We're going to get there and you see the importance of VPN. The next thing that VPN does is again for security. So if you want two systems, it's what we call trusted network. You want to trust a network and you restrict access. So you create a VPN and what it does is it tunnels the information so to hide it from the eyes from the bad guys. So the information is secretly sent so that it will be hard for an attacker to get access to it. And that is the function of a VPN. First, hide your identity, protect you from the internet, especially we're going to talk about a bit again with IPs as well. And then I'm going to talk about that more where VPN comes in as well.
All right, thank you so much.
Welcome. Mr. Jonathan.
Yes, sir. Actually, I'll just wait. I'll just ask my question in the end.
Okay, all right. So we said there is also another protocol that we call FTP. And FTP, by default, is what we call file transfer protocol. And FTP is also used, you can use it to transfer information. FTP by default uses what we call port 20. So FTP stands for file transfer protocol, and we say it uses port 20. So if you connect into system that uses port 20, know that that is FTP service. FTP transferred information in what we call in a clear text form. It transfer unencrypted messages. So if you're using FTP, it's going to transfer your information in unencrypted form, or what is something that we call in a clear text form, which means that everybody can see the information that you enter. And from security standpoint, this doesn't provide you any security. Your information is not protected, which means that attackers can have access to your information. Now we're going to see a live session of this. Now, again, I think I'm running this guy in here. Let's see. If you notice, this guy is still running every time, sending. You see how computers are communicating 100 times faster than you can think about things that are happening behind the scene. If I stop this, you see that I see information going to Google and other stuff. So if you see, my computer is connecting to Google and sending information, receiving a lot of information from Google and other services. That is good. What I wanted to do now is, I think this guy is also running. That is why we're seeing a lot of traffic, because I was wondering. Yeah, this guy here is running. Let me see if I can stop it. So this student that I used to log in is also still, this student is still in class. Let me see. Because I was wondering why I was receiving a lot of traffic like that. And then, yeah, I've forgotten that these guys are still running in the background. Let me close this one also. Okay, it's taking time to close out. What about this guy? Let me close this guy. And then close this guy also. And then this guy. Yeah. So that should help a little bit. Okay, it's not, it doesn't want, okay, yeah, it finally did. All right, so, and then let me see how things are coming in here again. But try, and maybe it should be a little better now. Bash. So, yeah, so it's a little bit better now than before. Yeah, but you can use this to capture and see live traffic. So what the next thing that we want to do is that we want to capture a live traffic that we can go in and see things for ourselves. So if you see in here, there is something that is happening here. You see a computer asking another using app, it is broadcasting and is asking who is, that is a question, who is this? Which computer's IP is this? And then it got a reply. You may see some DNS working. And then it says it was able to resolve that. And then TCP kick in and a whole lot of things happening. But we're going to talk about this later. But so what I want to do now is that we want to see FTP in action. So the first thing that we connected here, this is we're using SCP, secure copy, but we want to see FTP. So what I'm going to do is open a new session and I want to use FTP. Now, FTP, yeah, it uses 2 ports. One of the port is 20 and the second one is port 21. So mostly if you log into system, is going to use port 20, but mostly logging in, we use port 21. So in here, when I change the system to, if you look at it, if I change it to a different one, see that the port number changed. When I change it to FTP, what did you see? What do you see in here?
No encryption.
No encryption. So any information that you send out using this protocol is going to be in a clear text form. You can see actual information that somebody is putting in. So let's try and see. Before we do that, let me start this guy for it to be capturing the traffic, and we'll try to log in. So it's in promiscuous mode, which means that everything that is happening, it can capture that traffic. So if I go in here, all I need to do is to put IP address and then 130, and then I'll put in the username and then put in the password. And then bam, I log into, yeah, it gets me connected. Now let's stop this. If we go in here, can we see that connection? I've stopped this just to let us see something. If you see in here, we started seeing something called FTP. Did you all see that?
Yes.
We said
Yeah.
FTP doesn't do secure connection, or your information that you send through FTP is not encrypted. If you see the next packet that FTP says, it says username. Did you see that?
Yeah, the
What
password.
username is that?
Student.
Student.
Okay. If we go down a little bit, and here, what is that?
It says password required.
And if you look at below that, what is that?
Like a school password.
School one. If you're using a service like this, through this call, your information is going to be in a clear text. When I was entering the information, you didn't see it, and you think nobody sees that. Because of this protocol, it's not secure. It doesn't do encryption. Somebody behind the scene can capture your traffic and will see your password in a clear text form like this.
Wow.
That is why we said FTP is not secure. And if you see, the system is telling you, when we're logging in, the system tells you that when you are using this protocol, your information is not encrypted, which means it's in a clear text form that somebody can see and read it. That is why in organization, these are some of the protocols that they will block, because if you send information over the internet using this protocol, is just as ABC for somebody to get that information. So what did they do? To help solve this vulnerability in FTP, they say that, okay, if you want to send information, don't use FTP, use a different one. So therefore, FTP will now change to enjoy the advantage of SSH to become SFTP. SFTP stands for Secure File Transfer Protocol. SFTP uses port 22. Because of the advantage that SSH provides, SFTP will use that. So let's go test that. We also have SFTP. So let's go in again. We just open a new terminal. And this time, if we select SFTP, did you see that? What port is that?
22.
Port 22. So all I would do is put the IP address in again. And I want to make sure that I start this guy as well is running. And before we do that. So again, that guy is running. And all I need to do now is to put in my username and my password. This time you guys are not gonna see my password anymore. So again, it's asking me, the server host one was not found in the cache. You have not guaranteed the server. I can just say yes, and then it continues. So I'm connected now. So I'll stop the system and let's go and see again whether we'll be able to see anything concerning SFTP in here or not. And the answer is no, we're not gonna see anything SFTP. We stop in here for FTP connection. When we close that session, this is where we saw the username or the password of a student that log in. After that, we don't see anything anymore. And when we start logging in, so everything is just TCP. And we don't see anything concerning FTP, SFTP anymore. If you notice, there's nothing for SFTP. That information is encrypted, so there's nothing showing in here for us to see. That is the beauty of using that service. So it hides your information from the eye of the bad guys. So port 20 and 21 are one of the port that we said is related. So when we hear port 20 and 21, what you should know is FTP, and that port number is not secured. So SFTP will use port 22 to enjoy the advantage that SSH provides. Also, another protocol that we want to talk about is what we call SSL. What is SSL? SSL is what we call the secure socket layer. We have SSL. We say SSL is what we call secure socket layer. Now, it used to be the old technology. The new technology that is in place now is what we call TLS. So you see some people write this together, SSL/TLS. TLS stands for Transport Layer Security. These two protocols provide a security when you're transferring information over the internet. They are used, so when we say they, we mean SSL and then TLS. They are used to secure information sent over internet. So this guy will help you secure your information. When you send in information over the internet and you use this protocol, it's going to help encrypt your information or secure your information. So the first thing that we want to look at is, and most of the time, using this is related to port 443. It means that if they talk about port 443, know that it means that the information that is sent through that will be secured. So there are some services by design, just as we talk about SSH being using port 22, and the advantage that it provides is used to by others. So which means that this same thing too, when you send your information using this protocol, your information will be encrypted. So TLS and SSL, they encrypt or they send, they transmit encrypted messages. Or they transmit what we mean is information. So if you sending information to these guys, know that your information will be encrypted. So based on that, we have another protocol that is what we call, is the most common protocol that a lot of us we use when we're browsing the internet. That protocol is what we call HTTP. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It transmits unencrypted messages. So if you're sending your information through HTTP, your information will not be encrypted. And HTTP also uses port 80. So anytime you hear about HTTP, it is related to port 80. So when you and I, some of you are going online to browse the internet, you prefix the URL that you want to call to say HTTP, and you put in colon / facebook.com. Because you want to browse the web or fetch information over the internet, when you tell these guys, hey, I want you to go fetch information, be careful when you are in the internet or somebody send you a link and you're using this protocol, your information will not be secure. Just as we saw FTP, your information will be in a clear text form like that somebody can see. If you have to send any sensitive information out, this is not a guide to use. Never ever send your information through HTTP, because your information, it transmits information in an encrypted form, which means that anybody can read that information and you need to protect it. So what happened? We want to change this to enjoy the advantages that these two guys provide. So what did they do? We changed these to what we call HTTPS. And HTTPS stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. What would be the last word?
Secure.
Secure. And if you ask to put this in your own word, from what we said from HTTP, what would you say? Does this transfer information, encrypted messages, or it also transfer unencrypted messages?
It transfers encrypted messages.
This guy will be used to transfer encrypted messages. HTTP will be used to transfer encrypted messages, and your information will be secure. So we said this is used if you want to transmit encrypted messages. Then you want to go with this guy. What port does it use? It uses port 443. So if you hear HTTP, synonymous to port 80. If you hear HTTPS, synonymous to port 443. Okay, I know some of you will get confused with this, but just take it easy and you get there. So those are the advantages. So if we go online right now, I want to test something for you guys to see. If I go to, let's say, let me do this, HTTPS. Let me do HTTP. If you see in here, what does the browser tells you?
Not sure.
What?
Not secure. Not secure.
Not secure.
Not secure.
So the browser is already warning you that, hey, where you are, information that you put in here, if you have to put in any sensitive information, this protocol before we fix with HTTP is not secure. So I can click on it and see your connection to this site is not secured. You should not enter any sensitive information on this site. For example, password or credit card, because it could be stolen by an attacker. Just like with the way we look at FTP, if you dare do that, your information will be hacked. Your information will be in somebody's hand, just as ABCD. So the system, the browser is warning you not to do that. So what does a lot of organizations do to protect your information? Let's look at another site again. Let's look at Facebook. If you look at facebook.com, did you see the padlock there?
Yes.
That is telling you, if I click on that padlock, it's telling you what?
It's secure.
Connection secure. What protocol is that?
We're using the
HTTPS.
We added the S.
HTTPS. Normally, let me add this to this guy here. Normally, if you want to visit some site, here, because you're using the default HTTP, normally you need to put a port number here. And because you're using the default, if the vendor, so that tells you if somebody is using, you don't put the port number when you're accessing the site, it means that the system is using the default port. That is why you don't need to put in the port number. But in case they change that port number and put in a different port number, it means that you have to put in the port number here. So if you go into a site and without you putting in a port number, or somebody send you a link and they are not in the default port, you see that they have a port number that is added, which means that that resource that you're trying to access is listening on that port. That is how it will receive that information. whilst we talk about port numbers as well, let me show you guys this quickly. How this information is configured. You need to tell the system what port to listen on, so the system can accept that when it's coming in. So I can do this dash list all.
Oh, Professor Kwako.
Yes.
I just put you 2 links in there. The first one was the think tag link when we didn't have student pay online, and then the second one is the current link. So you can also demonstrate that. Let them see.
Okay.
And because
Okay.
it explains that when you go online and you're paying, because you're using a credit card information, we need to use secure protocol and all the secure processes that will protect your identity. But the other one, you can't pay. If you pay online, all your information can be harvested by a hacker, even when you sign in and anything you do. So
Okay.
that's a typical example, and it explains what Professor Kwako is just also explaining.
So
So it's very
this,
important.
yeah, this is the site, Professor, the link, Professor Rick. Are you sure this is correct? It looks like that link is not correct.
No, it's correct. That is the think tech site, the original.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
yeah.
you can
So this
go,
is the original site without.
yeah, the first link, the
encryption.
first thing. No, the first thing that, yeah, the first one that we had original without the encryption.
Okay. So this is how it looks. If you look at it, it doesn't have encryption, and it is this. So we should all know this from today. If anybody send you a link that you have to pay or do put in any of your sensitive information, check this. And this is the second link that a lot of you will go to and pay. All right. So if you see this, it's telling you your information is secure. And later we'll look at this in detail, what makes this. If you see that padlock there, that is telling you that this information here is secure. So you are protected on the network when you send in information in and out. Another thing that just to add quickly, also that is just for my personal protection. Anytime though I use this, but if you see the 3 dots that are in here, though this will not provide any security, but I like to browse in these new incognito. If you open that, yeah, it's just a screen like this. If you see here, it's telling you your browser history, your cookies and site data information entered in this will be protected. So Chrome will not save this information. Your activity might still be visible to website, you visit your employer or school, or your internet service provider. Yeah, some of these things are, you can't get it all, but at least you're not gonna give your information to somebody stupid out there easily. So these are some of the things that you do to protect yourself on the internet, but understanding those little things and why you should be alert when you are on the internet to secure your information. So that is HTTP. So SSL, we say secure socket layer. SSL protects secure HTTP transfer as a hypertext transfer protocol secure with this, the use of certificate. So if you see the S in there, it means that information that you send through that system will be secured. So application protocols, HTTP is one of them. And as we said, HTTP is what we call hypertext transfer protocol. It's what we use to browse on the internet, and the internet web services to transmit web pages to client web browser. HTTPX uses HTTP or hypertext markup language is the common language used to display the web pages. And we say HTTP uses port 80 over TCP. Now, HTTPS is what we call a hypertext transfer protocol. It encrypts your information and transfer that traffic over the internet. And I also mentioned FTP and SFTP. So know that FTP is the file transfer protocol. It does not encrypt information. It sends information in a clear text form. And we said it uses port 21. SFTP It's a secure protocol, a secure FTP, and it encrypts your information before sending out. Then we want to talk about email protocols. This is very important for us to, how does your system send information out? When you're emailing, these are the three guys that help for email to be transferred from one system to the other. So let's see how email is transferred or how email protocol works. So the email protocol is also one of the protocols that we need to know and see how they work. And we want to talk about the email protocol. So the first one that we want to talk about is one SMTP. And SMTP stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. What is the work of this? SMTP is the protocol that is responsible for all outgoing emails. We said it is responsible for transferring all outgoing emails. So let's see, assuming that you are sending an email. So this is your system and you open your browser or your email client. So if this is your computer, where you create your email to send is what we call the email client. And we have something that we call the email server. So we're saying that SMTP is used to transfer outgoing emails and also transfer emails between email servers. So if you have email servers, the transfer of email or movement of email between email servers so happen using SMTP. So first of all, let's illustrate this. Assuming that Professor Eric and I wanted to send email to each other, I'm going to create that email. When I send the email to Professor Eric, assuming Professor Eric is also using a Gmail, then his client, assuming I'm using a Gmail, then my email client is going to be Gmail client, but the email server is going to be Gmail server. Professor Eric's email client is also going to be Gmail client. And as we said, SMTP is the protocol that is used for outgoing emails. So it transfers email from the mail client to the mail server. So where does your email live? Once you create your email and you click send, your email leaves your system, it goes to the mail server. SMTP is the protocol that is responsible to move that email for all outgoing emails from the client to the mail server. So from here, now the email is in the mail server. Which protocol moved the email from the mail server to the mail client? So from this movement, there is a different protocol that is responsible to do that. Those are the two protocols. One is what we call the POP, and POP stand for Post Office Protocol. Now, the current version of Post Office Protocol is version 4. So you're going to see POP 4, which stands for Post Office Protocol version 4. That is where you see POPs v4. There is also another protocol that helps do that. It's what we call IMAP. And IMAP also help do that. And IMAP, we said, is Internet Access Message Protocol 4 as well. Or okay, POP 3 and then IMAP 4. So it should be POP 3. Where is that? So we said IMAP is what we call the Internet Message Access Protocol. These two guys are responsible for being emails. They are used to transfer email from the mail server to the mail client. To the mail client. So for Professor Eric to read that email that I sent, it has to use POP or IMAP to move that message from here to his inbox to read, have access to it. What about if he wanted to send me or reply to my email? What protocol do you think he's going to use?
SMTP.
SMTP.
Yeah, SMTP.
The protocol that is going to use. And what protocol do you think I will use to fetch the email from the mail server to my system? POP
IMAP.
or IMAP.
POP 3.
Or IMAP, yeah. So
Okay, and then to help
that
you,
is how that works. In this, we illustrating a system where both systems are using the same email client or the same email server. Situation whereby what about situation whereby Professor Eric and I are using different email systems? So let's look at how that looks also. A situation whereby we both using a different email. Maybe he's on Yahoo and I'm on Gmail, and I want to send him email. Let's see how that works. So again, this time I'm using, assuming I'm using a Gmail client. So Gmail client. And in front of that has to be a Gmail server. And in front of that has to be a Yahoo Mail server. And then we now have a Yahoo Mail client. So this is where both systems are on a different email service. So I will send the information. What protocol will be used to send information from my client to the Gmail server? SMTP. And then from my Gmail server, the email moving to Yahoo Mail server, what protocol will be used?
SMTP.
SMTP. Remember we said SMTP to transfer outgoing email and also between mail server to mail server communication. Then when the email gets to the Gmail, the Yahoo Mail server, now what protocol will Professor Eric use to get the email from the Yahoo Mail server to his inbox?
Yeah, POP.
3.
POPs and IMAP. IMAP 4, POP 3 will be the guy that he's going to use. So again, when he want to reply to me, what do you think happened? What protocol will he use to send the email to me? Redrick.
Yes.
SMTP.
Yes, I just had it.
SMTP. And between here and here, what protocol again?
SMTP.
And what about from here to here?
POP 3 IMAP.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
So this is how this information flows for these protocols, how they are used to transfer email between two mail systems or the same email system.
Yes. So if you send an email, right, and let's say you make a mistake on the spelling of the email, there's usually an automated message that is being sent back to you. Is that the work of the server, or is it like, I don't know how I'm trying to put it, but
so the email that you put, assuming you put in something that is Gmail and you going in there, it's just the SMTP is telling you that, hey, the direction that you're pointing me to, I can locate that direction. So there's no way for me to send that information. So it's giving you a reply back. SMTP reply that you can't find the destination or the recipient of that email from the mail server. So they're getting a reply back.
All right, I get it. Thank you.
Welcome. So these protocols also use some port numbers. So SMTP, as we said, simple mail transfer protocol, transfer email between client and SMT server. SMTP have a default port 25. This port is not secure. If you want your information to go through system and use SSL or TLS service for support, then you have to use port 465. That will encrypt your information and give you a security. Also the same thing, post office protocol version 3, transfer email from server down to the client. It uses this port. If you want the port to be, if you want information to be encrypted, then you have to use this port number. IMAP also does that. IMAP will use port 143, the default, but if you want the information to be secured, port 993 is the port to use. Unfortunately, I wanted to tell you guys something at the early part of the class, but it escaped me. So what will happen is that, unfortunately, next week, this week is my last week with you guys. I'm not gonna be here for 2 weeks. So this is one of the hard topics that I would like to complete before you guys leave, so that the person that will be taking you can I'm not going to be around. I'll be traveling. And when I return, I will take you back again. But unfortunately, I didn't tell you guys during the start of the class. So just want to keep that in. And I wanted to complete this quickly. So the next thing is we're going back to IPs again. We want to talk briefly about IPs and give you some important information about IPs. So if anybody have some questions, I can answer it before we talk about the last thing. The rest of the things that is here are things that we already covered. Maybe I will talk about port numbers quickly as well. But the rest of the things are things that we already covered. The hub, switch, and then the router are things that we already covered. So if there's no question, then I would like to talk about the IPs quickly again, and then things that I want us to know here. So we just talk about IPs. We started talking about IPs from last week, and we mentioned that we have two versions of IPs. We have IPv4 and IPv6. So these are versions of IP. Now, by design, we can also group IPs into two groups. What are the groups of IP? We have one group of IP that we call a private IPs. We have the second group of IP that we call a public IP. Now, private IPs are IPs that when assigned to system can communicate within system in your network. Private IPs can be used or can on the same network. Or we said it is used to communicate within the LAN. And the question is, what is LAN? So if we have, assuming that we have a network here, and we have system connected to it. So let's say this is PC1, PC2, PC3. We can call this network A or LAN A. And LAN simply stands for local area network. So if we have another LAN, so let's say we have devices that are connected to this PC1. We have a phone and printer, whatever it is. This system in here can share information among themselves easily without any issue. The IP address that devices are connected to the local network, that is what we call the private IP. By design, this system cannot communicate with system outside. So what do we do? we have another group of IP that we call the public IP. The public IP is used to communicate on the internet outside your network. Used to communicate with system outside a LAN, or we can say over the internet. So where would your public IP sit? So if we talk about our ISP, let's talk about ISP. ISP are what we call internet service providers. When your ISP is assigning you IP, when you get in internet in your house, your ISP is going to assign you these two groups of IPs. It's going to assign you a private IP and a public IP. Now, how do you use your public IP, your private IP? The devices that are in your house will get a private IP. So all the devices that are in your house, they will get a private IP. Your ISP will only give you one public IP. So your public IP is what you use when you go on the internet. Your public IP will be here, public. So anytime you're going on the internet, you present your public IP. So let's go find what our public IP is. Everybody should go online now and go find what their public IP is. If you go online right now, you'll be able to identify your public IP. That public IP is under the name of the person who requested for that IP or that the internet service from the ISP. So when we are doing investigation, the IP that you see on the internet is the public IP, is the public facing IP. Everybody can see that IP on the internet. They don't see the private IP, but the public IP is under the name of the organization or who have registered for or requested for that internet service. So to check your public IP, let's go online right now and let's go see. Go type in, what is my IP? Just type that, the same word, what is my IP? And that is just hit enter. When you type that and then just click on this IP address lookup. And this, okay, I know what is happening here. Let me go back a little and then see, maybe this one, my IP address information. Yeah, I know what happened. Let me do something quickly and then let's try it again and see. So somebody asked a question about VPN earlier, and that is what is happening. So what I want to do is, let me disable this guy and let me refresh and let's see. Okay, let me open a new one and see if that is going. What is my IP? Okay, so now when I did that again, if you see, It's for the purpose of this class. That is why I show that, but I don't like to share my public IP. So you all see your public IP on the internet. And the beauty is, it tells you, so if you see here, public IP, your public IP will be on the internet. When your systems are going out, they share the information with the public IP, and that is what put them on the internet. The public is called public because it's available for everybody to see. So everyone can see your public IP on the internet. So if you type that command that I just put in, what is my IP address, you're going to see that your IP address, your public IP address is on the internet. Now, I just enable my VPN again, and then now when you see what is in here, you see that initially it was telling you exactly my location, but if you look here now, it's telling you my location is where? Toronto, Canada. I am not located in Toronto. I've never been to Toronto, and I don't know where that is. But this is the reason you want to hide your identity on the internet, because everybody can see your location when you're browsing with your computer. So this is one of the advantages of a VPN. VPN shield your public IP on the internet that nobody can see exactly your location, where you are whilst browsing. And that is why countries like Russia and China, when they block internet or everybody that is going on the internet, they can arrest them and punish them by just looking at their public IP. So people with VPN service, this is what they do. You can be in China, but you pretend as if your browsing will be hidden, as if you are in a different country. So therefore, it will be difficult for somebody to identify you where exactly your location is, because your public IP that is under your name is now hidden. One beauty of VPN service. The second advantage of a VPN service is it tunnels your traffic. So for secure communication on the internet to hide whatever you are doing. So it's just for self-protection. So I will show you the VPN service that I'm using in here. So this is what it is. And I can choose several countries to connect to. If you see in here, I can choose a country closer to me, or I can choose a country that is even outside United States, maybe Belgium, and then yeah, it's connected to it. And let's see what happened. Yeah, it's done now. So if I refresh this now, you see that my location is going to change. Okay, it's telling you now I'm in Brussels, and that is what it is, just to hide your identity whilst you are on the internet, because your public IP, you don't want your public IP to be used to identify you on the internet. So that is that. Now, if you use ipconfig, the IP that you see is your private IP. Your private IP is the IP address that you see on your system, because that is the IP that is assigned to your computer. So if you do ipconfig, that IP that you see, that is a private IP. The other one that you see when you do what is my IP on the internet, that is your public IP. Any question with the private and public IP? Mr. Riddick, I see your hand up.
Oh, so
Yes,
that's an
hello,
old
sir.
hand. That's an
Yeah,
old
Mr.
hand.
Joe.
So the private and then the public, is it the same thing as internal and external?
No, not sometimes what they call it is not internal. Yeah, some people classify it as that, as internal. So when they say internal facing means your local IP. That is as the private IP. And then external IP will be classified as the public IP. Dr. IJ, Mr. Joe, did I answer your question?
Yes, you did, sir.
Okay. Yeah, Dr. IJ.
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
Yeah, please can you illustrate more on the LAN? You were discussing something about LAN local area network using the PC 1, 2, and 3. And there was another drawing that you wrote. I didn't quite understand that.
So it's just what I was illustrating is that these are two different systems. So this is also another LAN. So LAN are what we mean by different local areas. So this is LAN B. So IP address that are assigned to this device, also these are also a different network, and this system can also communicate among themselves. So what about if these are on two different LAN and they want to communicate? This guy will also have its own public IP. That is, so they will send the information out. The information will go to the public IP, will hit this public IP, and then this public IP also receive that and send it to this network. So that is the beauty of public IP. We call it the public facing or external facing IP. Normally, you don't want your internal system to be to system outside the network directly. So that is why these techniques comes in with a private and public IP. Now, once we talk about this, did I answer your question, Dr. IJ?
So could you please tell me in the LAN B, that drawing in there, like LAN A, you put PC1, PC2, PC3. In LAN B, what is that? I couldn't quite
So I was saying what I wrote here, it's a computer, so PC1, maybe I say phone. So maybe you could have your phone system connected. So all these things here, and here we say printer. All these have IP address, but they are in your network. These guys also have their own private IP.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
And by default, private IP to private IP cannot communicate. So how do they do that? They will need to send their information to the public IP, and the public IP is the internet facing IP, and that can help the system to communicate. And yesterday, if you hear me, I was saying that IPv4 is getting finished. That is where this technique comes in. So to make this, if you listen or if you look at this picture carefully, I said that you only have one private public IP. So you have one public IP, and assuming that you have 10,000 private devices, how would that communication happen? Okay, I see some hands up. Edward, what was your question about?
Good evening. So my question is about, I have a YouTube TV subscription, which means I'm supposed to be able to watch TV wherever I am. But I noticed when I was out of the country, I was restricted. So does that have anything to do with the IP change in IP? And would that be public IP or private IP?
Yeah, so it could be your private IP have changed, and maybe for security reason, they map your public IP. So now that you call from a different location, they can identify that and see that, okay, hey, you're calling from a different location, and that is a restricted or the public IP that is coming from there. It's not widely listed. I mean, I'll use that now. It's not allowed, but you can access that. So there are a lot of things that could be done to block that. So there are a lot of multiple things that could be the cause. But most importantly, your public IP have changed. So if the organization map or the YouTube map your private IP or public IP, and they know that where you're calling from now, it's not from your network, then they're not going to allow you to access that just for security reasons.
So based on that illustration that you did, am I able now to then go into my system and change my IP address to an address here, and then have access to the to my subscription if I'm out?
You can change that. You can change it. Your ISP. So like I mentioned, your ISP hold that IP. the only thing that you can do is probably, if you have a VPN service, what you can do is that whether you are home or not, you can use the same VPN service. You're connecting from the same area. So for instance, assuming that I have this VPN on my system, and if you look here, if I'm connecting to Belgium from my home and to another country and I'm connecting to Belgium, I will still have the same IP that is showing as Belgium. So in essence, they will not know where exactly I am whilst doing the transaction or making the connection. But I could tell that there is some AI behind the scene that have known your location every time. So the moment you move out, they're able to tell. I also have that issue. So if you notice, the first time that I opened Chrome, it threw some error, and I say, yeah, I know what it is, because I knew it throwing this error because it could not identify me, and it's thinking I'm a robot on the internet. So it is throwing a challenge, but I know what it is because I was using a VPN service.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Welcome, Rosine.
Yes, good afternoon, Prof. So I was, out of curiosity, so can we visualize the public IP and the communication between the private IP and the public IP? Can we visualize that like previously we said the private, like the LAN to communicate between each other need to use the router? Can we visualize that?
We're getting there. We're getting there. We want to add more information. So let's understand the private and the public first. The next thing we're doing is exactly where we're going, where your question is.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Welcome. Ashda. I see your hand up. If no question, Rosie, if you don't have any question, you can put your hand down. Mr. Joe, I see your hand up.
Sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did not get to where when you come to VPN. You said VPN is virtual private network, right?
Okay.
And then you said something I didn't really get to where in terms of connection and in the process of like you talk something like by default it is private, and by private then when it's public. I did not really get to where maybe network something. I just wanted to be clarified on that part.
What I said is we're talking about two public IP, two group of IP, and we mentioned that we have public IP and a private IP. Now, your public IP is what is in your LAN, what is assigned to your devices that are on your network. That is the private IP. The public IP is the one that is sitting on your internet. It's public, everybody can see it, whose name is attached to that. So sometimes when we do investigation, we check with where that public IP is coming from. So for instance, if 10 of you are in the house and you are all communicating and they see some traffic on the internet and we are doing investigation, first of all, what we want to know is where from, so we can pinpoint to this house. Because assuming that that IP is 172.182 or 180.9.5, that is the public IP that we found on the internet. We have to investigate who is the ISP. We talk to the ISP and ISP will say, oh yeah, this IP is assigned to Joe. We know the address and the location. We can get information from the ISP. The next thing is to hide and know when this guy, whoever is on this network that is committing the crime, to them to see what exactly they're doing. So now we know the location, we know who the name of that person is. So that is why we always say that protect your internet, protect your private IP, because when somebody is in your network and they are doing something bad on the internet, is the public IP that is related to your house that is going to show. So I said the beauty is, in order to hide your private public IP on the internet, VPN provides some services to hide your identity on the internet so that your location is not known. That is the beauty of the VPN. And I also add that VPN also secure your connection. So everything that you do on the internet is secure. It creates something that we call a tunnel to provide or to protect your information that you're sending in and out. You can watch the video if there's something that I said that you didn't catch. You can watch the video to rehearse on.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Mr. Joe.
So, Prof, this is my question. You've talked about various parts, both secure and unsecure. And my question is, I believe the attacker can use both secure or unsecure to attack our network or systems, right?
Correct.
For that reason, in case there's an attack going on in our network or systems, which of the parts that will be the major concern or that we need to address first or should be looking for?
So first of all, you have to identify, that is a good question. You have to identify which port are the attacker trying to access the service on. And we're going to talk about that. We can classify the ports and where you should look, the most important port that you should be looking. So we'll get in there. That is going to be the first, we divide the port into three. That is going to be the first 124 port. Those are the most important one, that area that you should be looking at. But we'll get there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Also,
So
I'll be I'll be putting I'll put in a summary port and their uses and all of that in their shared drive. Is going to help them understand all the different ports. You just have to memorize some of them. And to add to that question, an attacker is going to use a secure port. The attacker is going to have high sophistications, but the unsecure port is easy to use. But the sad thing is that most of the unsecure port are vulnerabilities. So companies block them. So it's hard for those ports. If you see them as a SOC analyst, when you get to SOC, those will be some of the things to be looking when you're doing your threat intelligence or you're monitoring your network. And if you see a port that is used, like Telnet, for example, as port 23, that is a concern. You have to investigate to ensure that that port is blocked immediately. You create a ticket and you assign that to the network team to block that port. So it's hard for you to see some of those unsecure ports being used in work environment. There are some other things I wanted to explain also, but it seems like another way you can understand the protocol that he mentioned, the simple mail transfer protocol, that is server communication on a network. You're going to see that when you monitor your network system, secure mail transfer protocol. But for the IMAP, you're going to see that in the application. But what you're going to understand is that when, for instance, you are in maybe in Cameroon, Nigeria, Ghana, Denmark, around the world, when you are sending emails, you use DHL or FedEx. Let's use DHL, for example. The plane is going to carry the email from Accra to, let's say, New York. That is, it uses simple, you consider as a simple mail transfer protocol. Once it arrives in New York, and the plane, all the emails will get there into the trucks, and that truck is going to carry it to the local post office. That is considered as a post office protocol. So the post office protocol is distributing the mail locally to your homes, and then but the actual plane that took the email from one region to the other is using the server to communicate. So when the email in the post office protocol get delivered, that email stays in a vault, just like in a vault is a shared drive. So vault is a shared drive. You receive the email when you're listed. If you're listed, you read that same email. It's one email. So it's just like we send you your homework, we're sending you emails, and we copy all of you. It's one email. So if I'm purging that email, I'm just taking off one email. It's not like I'm going to purge 300 or email, like I send you emails, 60 of you, it's not 60 emails that come. So the email process is just the same like the shared drive that we use. If Professor Kwako is going to load this video or your note, it stays in that shared drive, that one shared drive that is sitting behind me right here. If I delete this video, all of you will not have access to that shared drive. So email system is just like it's a shared drive. It's just that for the Gmail or the Google Mail is sitting somewhere in California. The difference between you, when the email is sent, somebody in the US is going to see that email first before somebody in Ghana or Nigeria or in Europe, because the person in the US is closer to the email server or the email vault than somebody in Nigeria. So that's the logic. But as time unfolds, you're going to know, you have to know this process, because we'll start talking about phishing email and how you try to understand the email route, which is also called the email header. What Professor Kwaku just illustrated is part of the email header, the route of the email. And we need to see that to see, okay, hackers will intercept that email to spoof the email. And once they spoof the email, they insert in malicious code that is going to show the email is coming from an authentic source. Meanwhile, that email is not coming from authentic source. So how will you analyze that to ensure that that email actually left point A to point B without unencrypted, and is it using secure protocol? So that when you are learning this and asking those questions, that is why Professor Kwaku take this time to explain that, because once you come to the Ssl class and I'll be illustrating this, you should know what POP is and simple email transfer protocol, and how that email can be intercepted by an attacker, and what actions you're going to take to ensure that that email has not been spoofed and is coming from the authentic source. I just want to add that as you guys ask questions and you progress, to also help you understand it. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Professor. Yeah.
Prof. Eric, I want to ask you one more question. You sell Telnet, port 23 will be one of the major concerns in case of attack. Is there any reason for that?
Yes, because Telnet is unsecured and should not be allowed. Like his Telnet, FTP, those are unsecure port. So when you transfer data from point A to point B using Telnet, that data can be captured and in retext. So if, for instance, Professor Kwaku illustrated that if you use FTP, I move data, you can read everything from that. So if you're moving data from point A to point B, that is classified data or whatever, an attacker can intercept that data and see what you're seeing, because that data is going to be in plain text.
Thank you.
So when you send me email, like we talk about FTP or HTTP, so if you're typing your information using port 80, that's HTTP on internet, whatever information that you type in, somebody can intercept that information and see your credit card information and whatever you're typing, because that protocol is not secure.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Telnet is also one of the protocol that it uses port 23. If you send information through this port, just as FTP, you can see that information in a clear text. So hopefully when I return, maybe we can do this, or can do Telnet and also see how that works. Now, one thing that I wanted to share quickly before we end here is these two protocols that we call NAT and PAT. What is NAT? So we mentioned a private and public IP. So if you have 10,000 devices here, how would all the 10,000 devices connect to only one private IP communication? That is where this guy comes in. NAT and PAT comes in. So in order to reserve IPs, so you only need one public IP, but you can have 1,000 private IP, and all information will be connected out. So to do that, NAT, that is what we call network address translation. NAT translates, it translates your private IP into public IP. So the guy that translates your private IP into your public IP is what we call NAT. So as we see that, okay, this information have to move from private to public, the actual guy that is doing that work, that translation, is what we call NAT. So NAT is what we call network address translation. It translates public IP, private IP into public IP and vice versa. So from the public into private. But there is also an issue. If we have 10,000 systems, how will the NAT again know that, okay, from the public, how does it translate that information to each of the 10,000 device, individual device? There's going to be an issue. That is why PAT comes in, and PAT stands for port address translation. And what PAT does is that it translates private ports into public port on the system. So let's see how how NAT and PAT does that. So we just mentioned that. So assuming that we have our system, assuming that this computer here, PC1, let's say PC1 has IP 192.168.5.7. And then PC2 has IP address 192.168.5.9. And then PC3 has IP 192.168.5.10. If these are the IPs, and all these IP need to connect with only one public IP, 172.180.9.5. How will that communication happen? So the first thing that happens is that if we have this in here, PC1, PC2, PC3, NAT is going to say, okay, PC1, say, okay, my IP is 192.168.5.7. And PAT is going to say, okay, I will translate, first of all, PAT is going to assign port to this. So PAT is going to assign port number to this, which is going to, let's say, port 20. And then NAT is going to say, okay, hey, this guy in here, I'm going to translate this information to the private IP. This is where NAT comes in. To a private IP, 172.180.5, port 20. Then again, this device, we said IP is 192.168.5.9. And PAT is going to assign a port, let's say port 60. And then NAT is going to translate that information to the same device, 172.180.95, .9.5, and then the port number 60. So you see that when the reply is coming back, they know that which device is listening on a port, which device does port assign port 62, then is going to assign that same traffic back to that system. And then here, we also have this device, 192.168.5.10. And PAT is going to say, maybe I will assign port 100. And that is going to be translated to 172.180.9.5 or .5.9, and then port number 100. This is the work of NAT. So if you see, though we have a lot of private IPs, we only having one public IP that all these systems are using to communicate on the internet. And they can receive information and process it. With the work of these two guys, Hat and Nat, they help to make this successful. So somebody was asking a question about DNS. So let's see how the DNS, somebody was asking a question about the router. So this is what happened. Your router, the face of your router is having the private IP, and the other face has the public IP. So this is what happened in your home. Your ISP, like we mentioned, give you a router that is sitting there. So you have your router. And you have the devices on your network, though the router is also on your network. So this is your LAN. And you have computers in your house. So you have your phone, laptop, PC, all these things are connected. Now, if they want to go out, this is where the router comes in. Remember, we said the router is used to communicate between two different networks. Then the information is going to leave to your router. There's something here that we call gateway, default gateway. It sends the information to the router. This part of the router is part of your private. So everything from here all the way to this part of the router is going to be part of your private IP. The second part, this part of your router, the one going out, is going to be your public IP. So this is where your public IP sits. Information that leave your internet and go out through your public IP and come to your network with the come to your network through the public IP and hit your private IP again and get to the devices that are here. NAT sit in here and work. NAT and PAT sit in here and work. So let me see if I can, I will stop sharing the video to show you my network, see my router, and see that we can find all these guys in there. So let me see if I can get into my router and let's see something. Let me stop sharing first before I do that. Ideally, I don't need to show you guys this, but it's just for stop sharing. So I'm not gonna record this in the video. Let me, sorry.